Hello everyone, welcome back. So, it's time. Mavuika is finally here, and I'm going to be looking at a lot of different teams with Mavuika. Now, instead of doing one gigantic wholesale video on these teams, I just want to do like individual videos, sort of doing a bit of a deep dive into each various team. So, you know, that's why it's going to end up being the Mavuika series, which is kind of like the Xilonen series. We're going to be doing a much more detailed analysis of them. One great big wholesale video would probably just be the Mavuika rerun video whenever Mavuika gets a rerun, so look forward to that, I guess. Now, the first team I want to look at is, of course, going to be Meltloy, because it actually didn't take me too long to figure out the Meltloy rotation that feels the most satisfying to me. But what I didn't anticipate was how this team not only has Reverse Melts for Aloy, that we all want and love, but on top of that, this is a team where we can potentially get an incredibly satisfying forward melt for Mavuika herself. So let's have a look at the team and the rotation that seems to work, at least for me. Now, don't forget to subscribe. Did you know that 91% of y'all haven't subscribed yet? So maybe that's a good idea. Especially because, once again, this is going to be the Mavuika series of videos, so hitting that bell icon should be a great idea because it'll get you notified of the latest and greatest videos on the channel. Now, without further ado, let's get into it.
Animal test 63 of breath from the sky! Full throttle! Enhanced animal module 75! The hunt is on! Let the mountain's veins boil!
So as you can see from the B-roll footage, this team is actually quite expensive. Because we do have C6R5 Aloy, we have Xilonen, whose constellations and even her peak patrol song isn't terribly important. We have Sucrose, whose constellations don't really matter. And we also have 900 EM on that Sucrose, by the way. And we have DPS Mavuika. Now, the linchpin of here is, of course, going to be Sucrose, because her team EM share and the occasional red shred is going to be what helps both Aloy and Mavuika achieve massive damage numbers. Now, the rotation that I've noticed that works best is Aloy's grenaded to Xilonen's skill and potentially ult if you need to heal, plus Sucrose's skill, her ult is actually not recommended at all, to hopefully group the bomblets, and then we go into Mavuika's burst for big dick damage, and her skill, it's important that the motorbike actually hits to reapply Pyro, by the way, and then we go back to Aloy, pop it off. Now, a few things to note. If you need to heal and thus use Xilonen's ult after Aloy's grenades, well, you're going to end up removing the Cryo Aura, which means there's nothing for Sucrose and Mavuika to react with. If you do need to use Xilonen's heal at that point, I'd probably start with a charge attack from Aloy in order to apply Cryo, then go into Xilonen, then go back to Aloy's grenade, and then go to Sucrose, and then just move on with the rotation. Now, Sucrose's buff only lasts for 8 seconds, which means Aloy's ult won't be able to make use of them unless you quickly swap back to Sucrose for a use of her skill to reapply that A4 buff in particular. And it's the A4 passive that really matters, because even if you swap Pyro, well, it's not ideal, but you do want to make sure you still have that Pyro Aura there for Aloy to react with. So at that point, well, as long as you still get that A4 passive, yeah, that's still the bigger passive anyway, so who cares, right? At the end of the day, if you end up starting with a charge attack from Aloy, well, Xilonen's buffs end up starting to run out right before Ice Rush ends. Potentially swapping into Xilonen real quick to reapply her buffs is not exactly the worst idea either. And that's doubly so if you're using Peak Patrol Song, so that you can have both the damage percent and the res shred coming from Xilonen. And as much as I'd love to extend the duration of Sucrose's A4 passive, or potentially even use her C6 in some meaningful capacity, yeah, her butterfly just ends up causing too many problems if it ends up infusing with Cryo. And the problem is that, well, suddenly you have too much Cryo WAP. That's just it. So at that point, you start doing off-field forward melting with Mavuika, which is cool, I guess, but we're all trying to have fun with Aloy here. Yeah, a Cryo-infused butterfly just ends up being too much. Now, because of Sucrose being on the team, I have found that running an attack and damage percent cup on Aloy and Mavuika seems to do the trick. But you could obviously swap Sucrose out with someone like Kaz, and at that point, changing up both their builds could be a particularly good idea. EM Sad or EM Cup and Attack Sad or Attack Cup, and, you know, depending on which one you don't have already, that might actually yield some better results. And of course, I do want to mention again, it's kind of the same with Sucrose's Butterfly. If you end up using a cryo-infused Kaz ult, yeah, that's not going to work, because then you prevent underlying pyro auras, which kind of kills the Meltloy part of, well, Meltloy. So there we go. All of this to say, if you choose to run Xilonen on the team, then things do get pretty spicy pretty damn quickly. But up next, let's have a look at a team for those who, for whatever reason, are skipping Xilonen or don't want to put Xilonen on the team, where things get really scuffed real quickly, but it's not entirely impossible to work with what we got. Okay, so for those who skipped Xilonen, or they actually want Xilonen on the other side of the abyss, well, I found that having Mika as the replacement for the time being does seem to do the trick. Now, this ends up being a team that is a lot more Aloy-centric, with Mavuika swapping from Obsidian to the Scroll set in order to provide Aloy with the damage percent buffs. Now, what's really interesting is that Aloy does seem to do enough normal attacks to barely get enough fighting spirit so that Mavuika can burst on rotation. Do keep in mind, Aloy's first normal attack, which is a double hit, as far as I can tell, it only counts as one increase of fighting spirit. So unfortunately, it's a little bit too fast, right? That being said, though, I'm pretty happy that Aloy can provide just enough normal attacks to get just enough fighting spirit for Mavuika. But of course, we're not using a full power Mavuika ult, which means her A4 passive is a lot more scuffed. Thankfully, we are using the scroll set on Mavuika, so that should alleviate that particular damage percent loss by a fair bit. Okay, so it's not that bad. The rotation remains mostly the same. You can consider funneling energy from Aloy to Mavuika if you want to ensure that you're using Song of Days Past properly. If you do that, then you probably won't have enough energy for Aloy's ult. So it's a bit finicky, but that might be because we don't have another character on the team that is running Vavj. Unless we swap Sucrose with Kaz, for example. Suddenly it's Frenchloy with a different Archon. So what should we call this team variant? Well, I've thought of 4 names in particular that might work, but I'm not entirely convinced on either one. So we have Mauriloy, named for the Maori origin of the name Mavuika. Might be a bit odd. I've thought of Swahiloy, which is named for the Swahili African motif that seems to be a lot of the inspiration for Natlan. Again, it's a little bit weird. I've thought of Tribaloy, because, you know, Natlan is a nation of tribes. Or I've just thought of Natloy. Yeah, I'm not exactly, you know, working on full gas with the naming of these teams. So maybe if you could come up with something a little bit better than what I've come up with so far. You know, something that's kind of hitting like Frenchloy, but, you know, maybe it is... I mean, otherwise we stick with Meltloy and we just move on with our lives. Just like I mentioned a little bit earlier as well, if you just decide to go with Kaz, then potentially changing Aloy's build might be a little bit better, because once again, we're going to have both Kaz and, in this case, Mavuika as external damage percent buffs.
Letting great things echo. Animal type 63 away.
Breath from the sky! Try and stop!
Swirl, Mark 2.
This is a new one.
Alright, let's just do a quick rundown of the builds for all of the characters so that everyone has an idea of what's going on. I've been trying to enjoy Shimenawa's Aloy, but it's not been flexible enough for me, at the very least, because I'm missing pieces, to try out build variations, so I've gone back to running 2-piece for the time being. Meanwhile, Xilonen, Kaz, and Sucrose's builds are your usual stock standard builds for Xilonen, Kaz, and Sucrose. If you don't know how to build them, you should check out one of the 25 billion guides on YouTube on how to build these characters, including my guide on how to build Xilonen, I think, at the very least. Here's what my Mavuika builds are looking like at the present moment, and I'm probably going to stick with R5 Serpent Spine for the foreseeable future, but I am kind of thinking about getting another bacon, not just for the use on Mavuika, but potentially for use on my newly C2 the higher. So that's an idea. Yes, if I were to get a 5-star weapon, I probably should be getting her signature weapon. But funnily enough, I don't have nor want any of the Archon signature weapons. And even though, you know, Obsidian is a thing that exists, yeah, I know. Like, the crit rate that comes from Bacon is very high, which means I'm very dangerously close to overcapping on crit rate. But I think my builds for DPS Mavuika have compensated for that, so Bacon is kind of something that I'm looking into, potentially being a thing in the future. Oh, and for those who don't want spoilers and leaks, everyone just cover your ears if you don't want to know what's happening in the next patch, because... well, in version 5.4, we should be receiving a new weapon that could very well be the most Sucrose weapon of all time. So if you're interested in further enhancing your Sucrose to, let's say, have, I don't know, 1,200 EM potentially, you may want to consider saving up for that. Okay, leaks are over. That's basically where we're at with the characters' builds at the present moment.
Animal test 63 away.
Wrath from the sky! You're stuck now!
Stand clear.
Let the mountains be spoiled! Got something for ya!
Animal test 63 away.
Light of the blazing sun!
Stand clear. Enhanced animal module 70.
Bring it! The hunt is on! Ever seen one of these?
I think for the time being, my favorite Aloy teams are still going to end up being the freeze variants such as Frenchloy, and that's probably due to, ironically enough, reverse recency bias, if you know what I mean. But no doubt, even just on initial impressions, Meltloy is feeling really, really interesting and refreshing, thanks, of course, to the Pyro Archon. So I'm very happy with how that's turned out so far. I don't think I'll be investigating non-Xilonen Meltloy teams any further, though, simply because of how scuffed they are. So, yeah, it is what it is. But hopefully, if there are new characters that come out that actually become interesting for Xilonen-based Meltloy teams, we'll definitely have a look at them as well. Of course, everything that we've discussed here today also relates to Wrisley. I think with the possible exception of swapping out real quick to refresh Xilonen and Sucrose's buffs, I'm not entirely sure if Wrisley ends up losing buffs to his ult if he swaps out of his stats real quick, because Aloy does have things like Ice Rush and the Ice Rush passive, that is part of her A4 passive actually, which does end up being a buff to Aloy's ult if you actually wait long enough. So I don't know if Wrisley has and or loses something like that. So Wrisley mains, let me know in the comments if there are anything there that ends up not working out for Wrisley but actually works out for Aloy. Anyway, let me know about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about Meltloy and I guess Melt Wrisley now that the Pyro Archon exists? Let me know in the comments what kind of team comp and rotation are you enjoying the most. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action and Mavuika videos. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Got something for ya!
One with nature.
Pyroclastic surge!